Okay, I don't know if it's the best title, but that's the best that I've got. Okay, and I think hopefully the contents will become clear. Yeah, the contents are basically what I would like to address, especially with youth today. Okay. Before we get going, can I just see a show of virtual reactions? Like, how many of you, um, how many of you are in university or graduated from university? Can I just see a show of virtual hands? Okay, we have quite a bit here, right? Okay, maybe we could do the opposite. How many of you guys, how many people here do not plan to go to university to get a degree after high school? How many people do not plan? I'm assuming these hands, I mean, yeah. How many do not plan to get a university degree? Do not. Okay. So it looks like just, was that a, okay. All right. So it looks like the vast majority of you either are in university, basically you're going to university, or have already graduated. Okay. And this particular special topic is especially for those who are currently in university, and maybe especially for the freshmen. Okay. How many here are going to be freshmen in just a few months? You're going to be starting university life in just a couple months. Can I see virtual hands? Okay, right. So we have at least, looks like 17 at least. Okay, right. So hopefully this special topic can be helpful as you go into university, right? First of all, I think it's truly a privilege and opportunity for us to be able to pursue higher learning, so-called higher learning, right? According to recent statistics, only 36% of the US population has completed and has received a bachelor's degree, right? So that's like a 4-year degree after high school. And then in terms of the world population, only 7% of the world population has a college degree. And I think I just quoted college here because I don't think that website was very specific as to if it was a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. Okay, but just keep that in mind. Okay, but online right now in this class, we have near 98%, 99% attending or have graduated university. Okay, just to just keep things in perspective, right? Typically within Asian cultures, there also is definitely a encouragement for us to pursue as much education as we can. Okay. So this is definitely a privilege and an opportunity that not many people, the majority of the US population or the world population, cannot afford or does not have access to, right? But thankfully, we can, okay? And in the Bible, there are also a few characters that have went through so-called higher learning, higher education. The 3 that come to mind are like Moses. Moses, he grew up in the Egyptian palace. And according to Acts 7:22, it says that he was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in words and deeds. right? So that was due to being in that environment. He also had that opportunity. Daniel, because he was taken captive, he also was put through like higher learning in the sense that he could eventually serve in the Babylonian Empire or the Persian Empire as a government official. Right? Paul, in a way too, Paul, he was a Pharisee. He also was able to be a student of Gamaliel. Right? Gamaliel supposedly was a very like famous rabbi and teacher at that time. Okay, so the Bible doesn't. The Bible is fairly neutral on this overall topic of education. If we are able to pursue it, then that's good, right? That's good. If we don't, then that's fine too, right? What God sometimes gives more opportunities to certain people and then less. Okay, that's all within God's hands. But the Bible also does say, to those whom much has been given, much is required. Right. Let's turn to that verse. Let's turn to Luke chapter 12, verse 48. Luke chapter 12, verse 48. Can I ask Shauna, please read?
Verse 48, but he who did not know yet committed things deserving of stripes shall be beaten with few. For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required, and to whom much has been committed of him, they will ask the more.
Okay, right? So this is Jesus's conclusion after giving this parable. To whom much is given, from him much will be required. And to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more. Okay, so for us who are here in the US or Canada or some of these more advanced countries, as we see from the show of hands, many of us have this opportunity to get more education, and this is all from God, right? All from God, right? So therefore, if God has given us this opportunity, God also expects more from us, okay? From what we learn and from what we have been given. Okay? Just keep that in mind. So even though we have this opportunity and privilege, when you enter into the university, you're essentially like entering into the heart of the intellectual world. That's kind of what the modern university is like, right? Where ideas and knowledge is debated and discussed, right? And then universities are also centers of research and to continue to expand the overall body of human knowledge, right? That's what the university is like. And when you enter into university, you will come into contact with many different worldviews. Have you guys heard of this term before? A worldview? Worldview, does that sound familiar? Okay, I'll explain that in a little bit, right? And these worldviews, these different like ways of looking at the world, it not only is apparent in the academic studies in themselves, but also in just all the different types of people you're going to meet on campus. Okay. So especially when you enter into the university, there's like this explosion of just all these new ideas that you've never thought about before. Okay. Yeah, maybe if you had a pretty good high school, maybe you did get some introduction to some of these ideas, but in the college is basically full blown, right? And so therefore, it's very important to discern properly at this time, okay? In order to remain steadfast in our precious faith, especially because the university time when you're like age 18 to 22 is one of the most impressionable times in your life. You're basically, a lot of times you're independent now. Many university students do stay on campus. They are spending less and less time at home, more and more time with friends and people on campus. And so all of this interaction, it's going to make it, yeah, it's going to definitely impact the way you think and what you value and your overall outlook on this world. Okay. Let's turn to Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Let's go to Sister Helen, please read. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. You can just read the slide. I think I copied and pasted it directly.
Beware lest anyone cheats you the philosophy and empty deceit according to the tradition of man, according to the basic principle of the world, and not according to Christ.
Okay, so this is a letter from Paul to the Colossian church, and this was his concern for the believers there, because some of the believers at that time, they were also persuaded by certain types of ideology and philosophy and thinking, including things like worshiping angels, right? Or maybe sometimes some of them maybe reverted back to the law and Judaism and things like that, right? So Paul was especially concerned for their beliefs too, okay? When it says cheat here, right? Beware lest anyone cheat. I think this word is also interesting. It literally, if you break it down to its roots, it comes from the Greek words for to rob, right? And to lead. And essentially it means that someone has gained control of you and is carrying you off, has made you captive by that philosophy, by that thinking, right? That is really the dangers, okay, of going when you're in academia, when you're in the university. And that's also the main motivation why I wanted to talk about this special topic too, okay? So let's now address a question, right? I mentioned the term worldview a few minutes ago. What is a worldview, right? According to one of the dictionaries online, it's basically a comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. Okay, that's a worldview. As a Christian, we also have a worldview, the way we look at the world, right? And so based on various sources that I read, a worldview would have stances on these types of like big topics in life, right? A worldview would have stances on these big topics, including God, right? You have a stance on that, and that's theology, right? You also would have a view on what is the ultimate reality. What is the ultimate reality? This is a field called metaphysics, right? You also will have a view on what is mankind, what is humankind, right? This is so-called anthropology. You will also have a view on knowledge. What is truth? What is knowledge? Like, and this is fancy word is epistemology, okay? Epistemology, yeah. And then you will also have a stance on morality, ethics, and values. And the fancy term for that is axiology, right? So I'm going to show now a few tables just to give you an idea, okay, of what are some worldviews and their stances. Okay, right. This is just one example. a table comparing some general groups of worldviews. It's really small for you guys. Oh, you guys have you have it in front of you too? Okay. So this particular person grouped a lot of different worldviews into 5 main categories, right? You have so-called naturalistic worldviews. Okay, I'm going to use the pen. You have so-called postmodern type of worldview. You have polytheistic worldviews. You have pantheistic type of worldviews, and you have so-called theistic worldviews. Okay, and look on the top, right? You can see that each of these worldviews have stances on like man and reality, truth and morality, evil and death here, right? And then on God. This is just this particular person's chart. And if you you could just kind of browse, just quickly read maybe one of them. Like maybe let's go to let's just look at the pantheistic, that row, right? Pantheistic type of worldview, they will try to seek oneness with the spiritual, eternal, and impersonal reality. And individuality and personality are illusions. Yeah, so some philosophies, worldviews is like, we are all one, right? Ever hear that? We are all one. Okay. That's kind of like falling under this, right? Regarding truth and morality, truth is just a unity with the oneness of the universe. And it's not really to, oh, thanks for pasting that, yeah. It's not really to describe rationally. And then there's no real distinction between good and bad because the cosmos are perfect in themselves. Okay. Regarding evil and death, evil is an illusion. And then regarding death, the life force reincarnates to another form when the current body dies. And then regarding God, okay, I guess they do believe in God, right? But it's one infinite, unknowable, impersonal God that is in everyone and everything. Now, obviously, when you do a chart like this, you simplify, right? You have to condense, and you may not be able to really describe all the nuances, but this is just to give us an idea, okay? Okay, this is another chart that I found. Can a student also paste this link, if you can, to the chat? All right, so this person is also comparing different worldviews. Here, the various worldviews are on the top, right? So you have so-called theism, deism, polytheism, I think he spelled that wrong. Should be pantheism, I think, right? You have pluralistic type of worldview and a naturalistic worldview. And these categories are what I kind of mentioned before too, right? Can somebody paste this link? Is it easy for you guys? Or maybe I should do it. I have to dig out. Yeah, I should probably do it. Okay, this is one, and this is going to be the next. I'm going to paste 2, okay? This is just to kind of give you an idea, right? Okay, so the third link is basically something like this, okay? Okay. Now, having said that, and now that you have kind of a sense of what a worldview is like, I want to now highlight two influential worldviews that you see in academia, at least from my personal opinion and observation. Okay. The first one is secular humanism. Okay. Secular humanism. Has anyone heard of that before? That term before? Yeah. What about in Queens here? Is it brand new? Brand new to some of you? Okay. What about online? Is that a term you've heard before? Okay, I only see like one hand. Okay. All right, so we'll explain that. Okay, we'll explain that. That's why we're learning, right? That's why we're learning. The other worldview is called postmodernism. Does that sound familiar to people here in Queens? Postmodernism? What about online? Anybody ever hear of postmodernism? Okay, only like 3, right? Okay. No problem. Okay, no problem. Yes, it's also postmodernism. See, these worldviews are also going to eventually be expressed in art, but fundamentally, it's a type of thinking, right, or worldview. Okay. So these are two common worldviews that, in my opinion, my humble opinion, you will come across in the public university campus, or even just in Western society in general. Okay, when you interact with people, when you look at media, movies, TV shows, music, when you look at social media and people's opinions and things like that, in politics, okay. These two worldviews are different, okay, and I think that will be clearer as we go through this class, but it also has overlaps, okay, because this is related to their history. Okay. Both place humans kind of place humans at the center, right? Well, basically exalt humans, right? Secular humanism exalts human reason, and postmodernism exalts human perspectives, all different perspectives, right? Both will emphasize individualism. Both assume secularism, meaning like there's no God, or kind of like that. Okay, postmodernism is a little bit more open, but they kind of lean towards that there's no God. Right? And both are anti-traditional and anti-institutional in nature. When we go through these when we go through the class and you come back to this slide, I think it'll make more sense. Okay, but just keep that in mind for now. And from my personal observation, this may be an oversimplification, but the secular humanist worldview is seen more in academia in a strict sense. Like when it comes to if you want to publish something, right? Or if you want to, if you want to publish something in an academic journal, right? Because everything that's published needs to be argued out, right? Supported with data and somehow can advance the body of knowledge in a certain field, right? And secular humanism, it basically is a inductive approach, right? Like a empirical, scientific type of approach to building knowledge, okay, or gaining knowledge. And the postmodern worldview is seen more in when you study humanities, okay, and also in just general campus interactions and culture. These are just my humble observations. Any questions so far? Did I lose anybody? Okay, feel free to use the chat, right? Okay. All right, so let's now go through a quick, simplified history of Western civilization of the last 400 or so years. Okay, I'm gonna go real quick and like maybe this class ends what, 5:10? So maybe, yeah, 15 minutes, okay? You know how like we're using terms like postmodernism, right? So that means we need to kind of define what is modernism and what is like, okay, so let's just kind of focus on that term, right? By the way, I'm not a historian, also not a philosopher. I'm a preacher, right? So some of this may not be perfect. Please verify and read. But this is just my understandings. Okay, so a period called pre-modernism is basically the time before like the 1600s. In this time, I think you can understand in the Western civilization, the Roman Catholic Church or the Greek Orthodox Church or even Protestantism, right now is basically what people believe. Okay, you're either in the Roman Catholic Church or you are in the Greek Orthodox, or you are starting to kind of, you're a Protestant, but everyone believes in God. Okay, everyone believes in God, believes in Jesus, right? So in this type of time period, God, he's the basis for all truth, morals, rationality, and human dignity. Okay, everything is rooted in God. God is in the center. Okay, God is in the center here. God is the starting point for knowledge and wisdom. So this is kind of categorized by a theologian in the medieval times called Anselm of Canterbury. Right? He had some famous statements like, I believe so I can understand, right? I believe that I understand. I believe first so I can understand this world. Right? I believe in God first so I can make sense of this world, right? Or he also had another famous quote, which is faith seeking understanding. So you start with faith in God, and then you will gain maybe more, hope you'll gain more understanding in the world that we live in, right? Okay. But then usually historians then now mark a new time period starting around like 1650-ish. Okay. This was a huge shift in Western civilization that continues to remain and ripple till today. Okay. That was about 350, 400 years ago. This is when humans started to become at the center of understanding the world, right? So human reason, empiricism. Do people understand the term empiricism? No? Okay, empiricism. Empiricism, let's define it. Define empiricism. Empiricism basically is, okay. I'm gonna paste it here in the chat. Yeah, based on experiments, right? The view that experience, especially of the senses that we have, is the only source of knowledge, right? So that you have to, so knowledge is from observation and measurement, rather than being just yeah, so yeah, rather than just being like dictated to us. Okay. And then, okay, so human reason, empiricism, and the individual became the basis of certainty and knowledge. And so this overlaps with a period called the Enlightenment. Does that make sense? Have you guys heard of that, the Enlightenment? Right. But then modernity, this period called modernity, also includes later movements like Marxism, Nazism, and other like schemes, so-called utopian schemes that were based on human reason. Okay, so this kind of huge shift in human thinking is characterized by a Catholic philosopher and I think maybe even theologian, René Descartes, right? He said, "I think, therefore I am." So he basically he basically questioned everything, right? Like, how do I know things are true? All I know is that right now I'm thinking, I'm conscious, I think, and therefore I am. I'm going to start right there, right? Like that's the only thing I know that's certain. Okay, and then started to try to make sense of the world. Okay, so kind of to make it even a little bit maybe more simple is, you know, in pre-modernism, knowledge and things were really very much like top down. You know what I mean? Like top down, coming from God and down to us. In modernity, is very much bottom up, where you are trying to experiment and see, observe, and then make some kind of a higher conclusion, a higher truth based on your observations. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so now we get to postmodernism, right? Postmodernism, what happened, at least according to historians, is that we know in the first half of the 20th century, there were two huge wars, World War I and World War II, right? And basically people were looking at all the suffering, right? And the failure, so-called failure of modernity, okay? Because modernity is like, if you have human reason or you have this scheme, you can achieve like progress for man. You can achieve some type of utopia, right, for mankind. But for postmodernists, basically they were seeing like, hey, look what happened, right? You were so certain on this due to your reasoning, but that only resulted in more war and more oppression of certain groups. Okay, so at the wake of two world wars came a rejection of these so-called grand stories, or sometimes called a meta-narrative. Okay, since they were often used to marginalize and oppress others. Okay. So postmodernism goes like even one step further now from modernity, because modernity basically kind of excluded God now from making sense of reality, right? Postmodernism is a reaction to modernity, but it didn't go back to pre-modern times. It basically went a little further now. So not only was God excluded as a foundation for making sense of reality and human experience, we cannot speak of any universal truth, reason, or morality. We just have fragmented perspectives. Okay, so they rejected these grand stories or grand narratives that somehow was like an absolute picture of the world. Okay. And they focused on everyone's perspective. That's more important now, everyone's perspective. And therefore, there is no universal truth, okay, or reason or morality. Okay. So this type of thinking and worldview is characterized by one of these postmodern writers. I think he's French, right? It's basically incredulity towards meta-narratives. Okay. Basically, they reject any type of absolutes, essentially. Reject any type of absolutes. Okay, so a lot of this content here, I got from a website. So in your free time, you can also read, yeah, you could read this particular link, okay? I'm gonna paste it in the chat. Okay, now, going back to those two influential worldviews now, okay? In a way, you can kind of basically associate modernity with secular humanism, okay? You can associate this together. And postmodernism is its own thing now, okay? Postmodernism is its own thing. So when you go into the campus, these are kind of like, even though you may not know it, but those are some of the predominant types of thought and thinking that you are exposed to. Right? Okay, we still have 5 minutes. Let's keep going. So let's go to maybe describing more in detail the secular humanist worldview. Right? This particular quote is from Wikipedia, right? Okay, so secular humanism, often simply called humanism, is a philosophy or life stance that embraces human reason, secular ethics, and philosophical naturalism, while specifically rejecting religious dogma, supernaturalism, and superstition as the basis of morality and decision-making. Okay, that's put in, that's like, I think the first paragraph that I saw from Wikipedia, right? Kind of condensed definition. Okay, so it's a life stance, right? It's a world, yeah, you can basically say it's a worldview, okay? And what does it embrace? It embraces reason, human reason, and secular ethics, so values without God, right? Philosophical naturalism, meaning that the only thing that exists is the natural world. Okay? There's nothing beyond this natural world, only the things that you can see, measure, okay, and experiment. Yeah. And then complete rejection of religion, anything to do with God, okay? Anything supernatural. This again is started during the Enlightenment, okay, during the period called modernity. Okay, now the things that I'm going to quote now are from another website called secularhumanism.org. So I guess, I don't know if this is an official group or whatnot, but it also tries to encapsulate their thinking, right? So they say that secular humanism is a comprehensive, non-religious life stance. Okay. It's comprehensive, meaning that it touches every aspect of life, including issues of values, meaning, and identity. So it's even broader than atheism, okay? Even broader. Atheism is just a stance on God. Secular humanism is even broader now, right? Secular humanism is non-religious, espousing no belief in a realm or beings imagined to transcend ordinary experience. Okay. And then secular humanism is a life stance. So it's like a body of principles, and it can orient a complete human life. As a secular life stance, secular humanism incorporates the Enlightenment principle of individualism, right? Which celebrates emancipating the individual from traditional controls by family, church, and state, right? And then increasingly empowering each of us to set the terms of his or her own life. So when I'm reading this, does this kind of sound familiar when you think about Western culture and the university campus? Does that kind of sound familiar? Okay, hopefully you can start to, I think maybe this helps you to put into words what you experience, okay, in Western culture. Yeah, hopefully. Secular humanism also is a naturalistic philosophy. Okay? It holds that nature, the world of everyday physical experience, is all there is, and that reliable knowledge is best obtained when we query nature using the scientific method. Okay, so only nature, only the tangible, seeable, touchable world, measurable world is the ultimate reality. Okay, that's the ultimate reality, only nature. Yeah. It's also a cosmic outlook rooted in science. Okay. Yeah, so hey, they even use the term worldview here. Okay, right? So secular humanism provides a cosmic outlook, a worldview in the broadest sense, grounding our lives in the context of our universe and relying on methods demonstrated by science. Secular humanists see themselves as undesigned, unintended beings who arose through evolution, possessing unique attributes of self-awareness and moral agency. So this is their stance on mankind, you can see now, right? This is their stance on mankind. We were undesigned, unintended beings, according to them. Okay, according to them. And secular humanism has a consequentialist ethical system. This, I think, yeah, I don't want to get too technical here, but basically a consequentialist ethical system is basically determined by the consequences, okay, determined by the results. Right. All right, I'm going to pause here and we will continue later on this evening. Okay, let's bow our heads and pray in silence. Amen. But after this class, I am going to upload these slides, okay? So don't worry too much about that, yeah. Just try to follow along. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, okay? I know maybe for some of the younger folks, some of these terms could be overwhelming, but yeah, hopefully little by little, it'll make more sense, okay? Yeah, all right, we'll continue this